Technology has come so far in such a short space of time that these days it feels like almost as soon as a game is launched, its graphics are obsolete. Though released just 6 years after Rocksteady's first Batman game, the developer boasted that each of Arkham Knight's characters had more polygons than the entirety of Arkham Asylum, which is frankly staggering when you think about it. Some developers, on the other hand, choose to avoid realistic graphics in favour of a more artistic style, with the result not only being something slightly out of the ordinary, but one that doesn't look dated even several years down the line. For this list, we're taking a look at some of the games that, despite being several years old, could easily have been released only yesterday and that we don't foresee showing signs of aging anytime soon. I'm the everlasting Ben from Triple Jump, and here are 10 video games with graphics that never age. Number 10. 13. If we think back on other games released in 2003, such as Call of Duty and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, although they may have a place in our hearts, it's hard to deny that they haven't aged as well when it comes to the graphics. One game that remains fresh as a daisy, however, is Ubisoft's first-person shooter 13. Based on a Belgian graphic novel series of the same name, players are immersed in a world of crime and conspiracy, telling the story of the eponymous 13 as he tries to uncover who is behind a plot to replace US democracy with a totalitarian government. Although the game itself received fairly mixed reviews, most critics were highly complimentary of the art style, which makes players feel like they're shooting their way through a gritty comic book. Each shot of a weapon comes with a satisfying onomatopoeic exclamation. Taking damage causes the whole book to shake, and NPCs get their deaths chronicled in a series of beautifully drawn panels. Bit grim, really, isn't it? By using a cel-shaded style rather than a more realistic approach, 13 has ensured that it has remained timeless, which is really quite lucky considering that the 2020 remake is utter rubbish and you're far better off playing the original.
Oh my god, here she comes.
Number 9. Minecraft. Fun fact, your graphics can't become outdated if they're never up to date in the first place, which is probably one of the reasons that, more than a decade after it was released, Minecraft continues to be one of the most popular video games in the world. Developed by Swedish developer Mojang Studios, Minecraft is a procedurally generated open-world game in which the aim is, well, there basically isn't one, and it's down to players to make their own fun, but you already know that. It's Minecraft. They can do this by crafting tools and mining for materials, building homes and structures, fighting monsties, and exploring the vast landscape, which despite being generally cuboid in appearance is actually quite beautiful. Reminiscent of an impressionist painting, up close the terrain just looks like a load of squares, which, to be fair, it is, but ascend to the top of a nice tall mountain and you'll find yourself an absolutely stunning view that even the most graphically advanced titles struggle to replicate. Because Minecraft is just a bunch of blocks, its graphics will probably never age, meaning that generations of gamers will be able to enjoy its splendor for years to come. You know, until a creeper comes and blows them up, that is. Number 8. Kirby's Epic Yarn. Over the years, our favourite pink blob Kirby has taken a number of forms, from pixelated sensation in the early 90s to the bright, colourful globule we know and love today. Sadly, although considered retro, the graphics in Kirby's Dream Land can definitely be considered outdated, and it won't be too long before his most recent outings are harshly judged in the same way. It was for this reason that whoever thought of rendering Kirby in fabric for his 2010 outing Kirby's Epic Yarn is nothing short of a genius. Banished to Hatchland, turned into wool, and stripped of his powers for the crime of eating some nutty sorcerer's tomato, Kirby must work with Prince Fluff to recover the magic yarns that were holding Patchland together, and stop the evil Yin Yarn from turning Dreamland into textiles. Oh no! The visual style of Kirby's Epic Yarn was created by placing digital images of real fabrics over polygons, leaving players with a game that literally looks like it's been stitched together from bits of old curtains. Not only does this work perfectly with the game's themes integrating with the gameplay to allow Kirby to pull on loose threads and alter the shape of terrain, but it also means that the graphics will remain ageless for years to come. Does bring a whole new meaning to the term screen tearing though. Next one. Number 7. Journey. If you asked me to describe the premise of 2010's Journey to you, in all honesty, I would struggle. Not because any part of it is convoluted or confusing, in fact, quite the opposite is true. Despite never saying a single word, Journey is able to stir up a vast array of emotions, causing players to feel awe, fear, and sadness all in the space of its 90-minute runtime. Though there are a number of elements that contribute to a wide range of feelings you'll go through whilst playing Journey, its stunning visuals are undoubtedly one of the key ingredients. Seeming more like a moving painting than a video game, Journey's graphics are kept simple so as not to detract from what the game wants you to sense. The expansive desert seems lonely because of endless rolling sand dunes and a gradually softening colour palette, and mountains are made to feel stark and dangerous thanks to the effect of falling snow and fog. Journey's simple yet sprawling environments and minimalist player characters not only inspire wonder and a sense of insignificance in such a vast world, but also keep the game completely timeless, ensuring that whether we first experience it in 2010 or 3010, we will be fully immersed throughout the entire short but captivating experience. Number 6. Almost the entire Telltale back catalogue. Oh look everyone, it's a wild card! Don't play the vid, that's Peter's thing, that's copyrighted. Yes, indeed, we feel the need to include almost the entire Telltale back catalogue on this list because, frankly, picking out any single one of their games proved just too darn difficult. Though the developers' earlier games like 2005's CSI 3 Dimensions of Murder are starting to show some signs of age.
Someone's murdered a mannequin.
The art style employed throughout the 2010s is holding up far more successfully. Characterizing their games with a comic book style artwork that invokes the feeling of reading, or rather playing, a graphic novel, Telltale's ability to create a feast for the eyes means that the likes of their Wolf Among Us and Game of Thrones series can be enjoyed by narrative-loving gamers for years to come. Not only this, but adapting each source material into the distinctive art style rather than the other way round meant that they were able to successfully tell stories in a multitude of genres with ease. From comic book heroes like Batman to modern horror mainstays such as The Walking Dead. Sadly, the developer closed its doors in 2019. However, LCG Entertainment have purchased the majority of Telltale's licenses and assets. It just remains to be seen if the publisher will remain faithful to the now defunct developer's iconic style. Number 5. Rayman Origins. The vast majority of platformers, while still enjoyable to play several years after release, do have a tendency to very much look like a product of their time. It's not necessarily a bad thing, as for many of us it stirs feelings of nostalgia, but it can put off newer players looking for more modern visuals. One side-scrolling adventure that will probably never be subject to such an issue, however, is 2011's Rayman Origins, the fourth main installment in the franchise that sees our titular hero facing off against Dark Toons alongside his pal Glowbox. Due to its art style, the game feels less like a AAA title and more along the lines of something an indie developer would turn out. Pausing for a moment to take a look around the level designs will reveal that, despite the quick pace of the game, very little of it is actually animated. The backdrops and platforms are static, while only our protagonists and a select few other assets actually move. The effect we end up with is very similar to old animated movies, where the backgrounds are very intricately and beautifully designed, while the things that need to move are simpler and more cartoony. Does anyone else have the sudden urge to watch The Jungle Book? No, just me. Number 4. Limbo. Another fine example of a game that uses its art style to ensure that you're focused on the narrative it weaves above all else is 2010's Limbo, a game in which we join a young, nameless boy as he attempts to traverse a monochromatic hellscape. The actual meaning of Limbo has been up for debate amongst players since its release, with some interpreting it as an allegory for grief and bereavement, while others suggest it is more to do with the protagonist's struggle with growing up. Regardless of the meaning behind the game itself, it's hard to deny that its dark, oppressive visuals are nothing short of stunning in a bleak sort of way. Presented entirely in shades of grey, the game perfectly encapsulates the feeling of hopelessness that are so often accompanied by a sensation of lost colour in the world, while the stark difference between the silhouetted boy and the light and shade used in the game's backdrop serves to make the sense of isolation we get on his behalf feel all the more suffocating. While not a pleasant game to play in the traditional sense, Limbo will resonate with those of you that have experienced depression, loss, and loneliness, and thanks in part to its extraordinarily fitting art style, it will continue to do so for years to come. Number 3. Okami. Whilst many games employ a non-realistic style out of choice, as is the case for many of the titles on this list so far, some do so due to the technology constraints of the period, switching away from graphics that require a great deal of processing power in order to ensure that every other aspect of the game lives up to the developer's vision. One such game was, somewhat surprisingly, 2006's Okami, a tale of how Japan was saved from darkness by the Shinto sun goddess Amaterasu. Developer Clover Studio had intended to use more realistic rendering for the game, but as its launch was towards the end of the console generation, their lofty ambitions proved too much for the PS2's processing power. Instead, they decided to draw inspiration from Sumi-e, a traditional East Asian style of ink wash painting that I've almost certainly mispronounced, and combined the style with cel shading in order to create a unique visual effect. What resulted was not only an art style that perfectly captured the heart and soul of the game's narrative, but one as timeless as that to which it pays homage, perfectly balancing centuries-old techniques with modern ones to create something truly special. Number 2. Borderlands. For those of you about to dismiss the Borderlands series for just being yet another franchise that uses cel shading in order to avoid its graphics becoming outdated, I'm here to tell you that the games aren't cel shaded in fact, and instead utilize an entirely different graphical technique to make them look like comic books come to life. See? Every day's a school day. It's unsurprising that Gearbox and 2K are keen to differentiate the style of Borderlands from other games, considering the effort that went into producing each individual texture, and if you've played the game, you'll know there are a lot. Each one had to be drawn, scanned, edited in Photoshop, and then run through the software that gives it those graphic novel-style outlines, all to create something intended to make players think that they had fallen into the pages of a comic book. What may shock you is that the OG Borderlands was originally developed with realistic-looking graphics, but after the whole thing was coming out a bit brown and not at all in keeping with the game's fantastical themes, the developers decided to shake things up, coming up with the new stylistic concept and running with that. All of that effort clearly paid off, as Borderlands and each of its sequels have all been very well received by audiences who, among other things, praise the games for their unique graphics that haven't aged a day since launch. Number 1. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Over the years, our boy Link has gone from a tiny 2D cluster of pixels to making the leap into slightly blocky 3D and then transitioning into full open world splendor. However, the entry that stands out from the rest of the franchise, certainly from a graphical perspective, is 2002's The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. After developing a short clip based on the designs from Ocarina of Time to demo at the 2000 Space World Expo, the team behind Wind Waker quickly decided that a change of direction was needed, fearing that the next entry in the series could easily become derivative of its predecessors. The team explored a number of options, but it was only when designer Yoshiki Haruhana created a cartoony version of a young Link that they were able to settle on a more childlike style for the game. Although the Legend of Zelda series has never been renowned for its realism per se, Wind Waker's design was still a departure from what audiences had been used to. Fortunately, it was a welcome one, capturing the spirit of adventure by utilizing more simplistic, cartoonish graphics and bright colors that have managed to stand the test of time, even though it's been 2 decades since the game's original release. Boy, do I feel old.